Hello class, today is the culmination of nearly 8 months of insanity. As my ancient Tumblr account can demonstrate, I was obsessed with the TV show Once Upon a Time. But for reasons we'll get into, I rage quit partway through the series when I watched it for the first time. I would say since that time there has just been an emptiness in my heart and soul that is impossible to fill. So I decided that I would finally make like Chappell Roan, get the job done for real this time, and watch the entire series all the way through. 155 episodes, which turns out to be a much bigger commitment than I even anticipated. To put it mildly, it was a life-changing experience. Is this show good? No. But is this show amazing?
I need you to make him just like you. I need you to make him brave.
Yes, I will say this is not going to be an episode-by-episode plot analysis. Haley Whipjack, I am both horrified and impressed by your level of commitment, but as you can no doubt imagine, you don't spend that much time watching one TV show without forming some extensive opinions, which I of course now must share with the masses because my opinions are always right and important. This is for people who've watched all 155 episodes or 0 episodes. And the great thing about Once Upon a Time is that context often doesn't make the show make any more sense. Because Once Upon a Time is an obnoxiously long title, the fan acronym is OUAT, but in my mind, it's OAT, so I will be referring to it as such. Get with it. Once Upon a Time tells the story of fairy tale characters, mostly Disney IP, who have been cursed to live in the darkest and most horrific place known to man, Maine, in a town called Storybrooke. The daughter of Snow White and Prince Charming, Emma, grew up in the real world after her parents sent her through a portal to protect her from the curse, and she was prophesized to break this curse just as soon as she was sick of bachelorette parties at the age of 28. Emma may beat up embezzlers and support the prison industrial complex in the real world, but don't get it twisted. She is a friendless, parentless loser.
What the hell do you know about family, huh?
Nothing.
Emma is brought to Storybrooke by her 10-year-old son, Henry, who she has not seen since she put him up for adoption at birth. Henry was adopted by the evil queen, Regina, the one who cursed this town and forced the fairy tale characters to forget who they are, wear skinny jeans, and peplum tops. I'm telling you, she's a sick individual. Sick, sick, sick.
That clock hasn't moved my whole life. Time's frozen here.
Excuse me?
The evil queen did it with her curse.
Henry has then been gaslit since birth into believing this is a totally normal town, despite him being the only one who ages his entire life. Until, of course, he realizes that, everyone in this town are fairy tale characters weirdly similar to his Disney VHS tapes, and he sets off to get his birth mom to break the spell. Despite Emma believing that her son is certifiably insane, Emma goes to Storybrooke to investigate this situation because, let's face it, if nothing else, this seems like a way more affordable way to eat, pray, love herself out of her quarter-life crisis. We then meet a large ensemble of characters in Maine who appear to be just your normal citizen, but are in fact fairy tale characters.
Be careful! You almost shattered my wolf thing, Billy.
I'm sorry, Ruby, but look, it's fine.
So what is she, like one of the 3 little pigs or something? Each episode alternates between the current timeline, where Emma rivals Regina with just the right amount of sexual tension, may I say.
I didn't come for dinner.
And what did you come for?
You.
And the past, where we learn the origin stories of the various ensemble characters throughout the show. The format actually almost exactly follows the hit TV show Lost, which similarly relied on a large ensemble and merging timelines. Well, not almost. Once Upon a Time is exactly like Lost if the smoke monster was swapped out for Peter Pan, because the showrunners of Once Upon a Time were also both writers on Lost. The show, to my delight, absolutely leans into this aspect of its origin, casting multiple actors from Lost, even when their casting made little to no sense at all. Why is Belle from Beauty and the Beast the only Australian in the entire Enchanted Forest?
I never wanted you to be perfect. Just wanted you to try.
The world may never know. The show throws in tons of references to Lost. The candy bars, the whiskey, and of course the numbers. The numbers, Jack.
And it's almost
8:15.
At the end of season 1, Emma breaks the curse, trapping the characters in Storybrooke, making all of the inhabitants remember their fairy tale past. Although interestingly, despite the curse forcing them from their homeland into this desolate landscape of Maine against their will, the fairy tale characters never really express a strong desire to go back to the Enchanted Forest past like 3 episodes in season 2. Presumably because they're too busy getting cursed constantly. To my delight, the wiki sorts the timeline of the show by the curse number we're on. It barely makes the timeline make more sense, but I do enjoy it. That is the show in its essence. A bunch of fairy tale creatures fighting each other, sometimes with magic, sometimes with vehicles. A few times with guns, over and over for 7 seasons. It's fantastic stuff. You know what's even more dangerous than fighting fairy tale creatures? This cowlick. But also, data brokers selling your personal information like your name, your address, your phone number to just about anybody, exposing you to things like identity theft, scams, phishing, doxing, and harassment. That is why I use today's sponsor, Delete Me. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that removes your personal information from hundreds of data brokers and people search sites. Delete Me has been the leading expert in personal identifiable information removal for over 15 years. They remove your data using their own tech and don't outsource to third parties, so your data is always as safe as possible. Delete Me privacy advisors, real people, are there if you have any custom requests or help whenever you need it. I have given my personal information out to just an ungodly amount of websites and companies over the years, and so Delete Me had quite the task in front of them, removing some of my personal data. But within just 7 days, they were able to show me some of the websites where my information was used and begin that removal process all for me. And you can get 20% off Delete Me plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/Norton. Use the promo code Norton or just use this QR code I have on screen. Thank you again to Delete Me for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. But actually, I'm not done talking about the curses because, like I said, an obnoxious amount of curses in this show. The first curse, which erases the town's memory and places them in Maine, is the Dark Curse, which justifies the central format of flashbacks before and after. So, of course, to continue that, the townsfolk of Storybrooke lose their memory and become trapped in this town again and again to a comical degree.
Once the curse is enacted, it can't be stopped.
I may not be able to stop it, but that doesn't mean I can't spice it up a bit. How does a forgetting potion sound?
There are 6 major curses cast against this town. They all take the form of a fortnight storm and are all each denounced by Grumpy with a vigor as if it was the first time this happened to them.
The curse! It's here! It's here! The curse! It's here! Black Fairy's curse! It's here!
That first curse was broken when Emma kissed her son Henry on the forehead, which represented true love's kiss. Considering Emma and Henry were one of the only 2 people in the town not even affected by the curse, that was pretty powerful magic. When you have something like true love, a magic so powerful it can reverse potions, create its own magic independently, and break any curse established in the canon of the first season, it can be hard to write a compelling external force for the other 6 seasons they have to write. Because doesn't love always win? Oftentimes, villains will rip out people's hearts. Sometimes they'll crush them, or sometimes they'll hold on to them, mind controlling their now heartless victim. But Emma's heart can't be ripped out because she, being Snow White and Prince Charming's child, is the product of true love. The divorce rate in the Enchanted Forest must go crazy because it sure seems like no one's parents loved each other. Point being, true love is a ridiculously overpowered and constant magical force in the show. So the writers have to go to extensive lengths at times to nerf true love's power. For example, true love's kiss does not work if the kiss isn't mutual. Consent matters. Except multiple people are awoken from sleeping curses by true love's kiss. So like, are they asleep physically but still magically aware of their surroundings or something? Both parties must believe in true love and believe in magic. True love's kiss doesn't work if someone loves power. True love's kiss doesn't work if one person just doesn't want it to work. Emma and Henry have true love as parent and child, but Emma can't save her parents while they're under a sleeping spell. Possibly because her parents just don't love her. I don't know. It kind of seemed like it in the show. In season 1, it's established that Belle and Rumpelstiltskin are each other's true loves. But in season 5, when Belle and Rumpel's relationship is on the rocks, Rumpel isn't Belle's true love anymore. But by season 6, they're back to being each other's true love. So are they soulmates, or what's the logic there? In season 2, Snow and Charming are both under sleeping curses. When you're in a sleeping curse, you can go to this alternate dimension dreamland. But if Charming and Snow kiss in this dreamland, it doesn't count because they're not awake. Belle puts herself under a sleeping curse in season 5 and also goes to this dreamland. But when the spirit of her unborn child, who for some reason is now an adult man behind on his taxes, he kisses Belle in the dreamland, she wakes up. When Snow drinks a poison that makes her infertile, she goes with her husband, Prince Charming, and Charming's mortally wounded mother to this magical lake, because only the magical lake can fix her infertility, not True Love's kiss for some reason. Charming's mom sacrifices herself so that Snow can drink the last bit of lake water, because the lake unfortunately dried up from the devastation that is global warming. And again, since Prince Charming doesn't truly love his mom, no one loves their parents in this show. His mom dies. True Love's kiss works for potions, curses, poisons? Absolutely not. Listen, I don't think that these plot holes actually make the show about AU fairy tale characters any worse, but it is fun to see how often the writers need to set dialogue aside to justify why their previously established rules of magic don't apply in this new situation.
Don't you need the Dark One's dagger?
Well, not if I have something that belonged to the apprentice.
They're all asleep.
Why are we?
Maybe because we're immune, we've both been under a sleeping curse.
So she found a solution to the memory problem. Today. In the nick of time before we all die.
She's been working on it all along.
They usually use Belle to do this because, you know, she likes books.
What's this? Eldrew's Manual on Defeating the Dark One. Huh, never seen you before.
And there is always an ancient book to explain these niche, convoluted rules in their local library. Like to cast the Dark Curse, Regina needs to sacrifice the heart of someone she loves most. So she kills her own father by crushing his heart in front of him, which is pretty brutal, I would say. Later on, Snow decides that she also needs to cast her own dark curse so that she can get back to Maine and Emma can save them. But that means that Snow has to kill her own one true love, which is Prince Charming. Oh no, I'd be so sad if one of the Charmings died. Don't do it. But actually, if Snow just crushes his heart, then splits her own heart in two, she can just put half of her heart in his body and Charming doesn't actually have to die after all.
How do you know it will work?
Faith! Feels like that's not really in the spirit of the rules set by the Dark Curse, but sure, whatever. Emma similarly? Emma also splits her heart in half to get her boyfriend Captain Hook back from the dead, but unfortunately she didn't have that idea a few seasons ago when she needed to save the father of her child, Neal.
I would have come after you too. I didn't know I could do this.
You couldn't have. I'm not there. I'm not in the boat.
Regina. Get ready for the coldest take in the Once Upon a Time fandom. But Regina is kind of my favorite character on the show. And that is in no small part because of Lana Parrilla's performance, who always managed to be both incredibly campy and heartbreaking throughout all 7 seasons, even when the writers had really run out of good ideas for her character.
Come out. We need to have a little chat. Or what?
Regina is the perfect villain in season 1. She has mommy issues. She beefs with a child to the point where it does in fact derail her life. Who among us? Regina, as a young princess, fell in love with this poor stable boy named Daniel, and she was just about to run off with him when her ultimate stage mom, Cora, tore out his heart and crushed it in front of her.
Mother, why have you done this?
Because this is your happy ending.
What?
Guess you might as well marry Psychowitz now, Regina. So now Regina is the queen. And more importantly, very sad. See, Cora knew about Regina's plan to run away with her poor boyfriend because tiny Snow White snitched.
And above all, you mustn't tell my mother.
Yes.
Did you tell her about me and Daniel?
Yes.
In a naive attempt to repair Regina and Cora's relationship.
I just didn't want you to lose your mother. Like I've lost mine.
From that day forth, Regina vowed to ruin Snow White's life by any means possible, including killing her dad, framing Snow White as a traitor and shunning her for years as an outcast, framing her for murder, killing countless defenseless villagers who swore loyalty to Snow, and oh yeah, placing a curse on Snow that forced her to forget the existence of her own husband, family, and daughter who she could not see or raise for 28 years of her life. But Regina and Snow's relationship is very Tom and Jerry. Sure, Regina has tried countless times to kidnap, torture, or kill Snow, but whenever Regina actually had the opportunity to do so, she never could. Because, inside, there's still some part of Regina that loves Snow, that wants to be good.
You don't think it's too late for her?
Oh, I don't think it's too late for anyone.
I take it back.
As the seasons go on, Regina goes from the crazed genocidal maniac we know and love to friend, hero, and an advocate for gentle parenting. To be honest, Regina's redemption really would not work if it wasn't for Lana Parrilla's performance. On its face, Regina's actions, particularly in her early seasons, are just irredeemable. I mean, in season 1, while everyone is cursed, Regina steals the heart of sexy boy toy Sheriff Graham, and not only forces him to do her bidding in enforcing her rules of law, but also controls him for other purposes. The implications of this are, of course, never addressed on this weird Disney Lost mashup show, but are brought up about once a week on the surprisingly active Oat subreddit. Always with the headline, "How come no one is talking about this?" With the top comment always being, we are in fact talking about this constantly. And unfortunately, this is not the only time that this kind of plotline was used on the show. See, in season 4, when Regina is redeemed, she's in love with Robin Hood. Despite Regina having murdered Robin's ex-wife, Marion, in the past when she was evil and stuff. I actually don't think that Robin ever learns that happened, by the way. But through shenanigans I do not have time to explain, Emma goes back in time and accidentally saves Marion from dying. And because she saved Marion from dying, she feels like she needs to bring her to Maine to fix the timeline, which is quite the cock block for Regina.
You don't think she'll become evil again? She can't. She's come too far.
But unbeknownst to them all, Marion in this alternate timeline was actually murdered by Regina's half-sister, Zelena. And then Zelena posed as Marion when they went back to Maine with the gang so that she can baby trap Robin and torture Regina by having a child with Regina's one true love. When this deeply disturbing scheme is revealed, Robin is just like, listen, Regina, I know your sister may have murdered countless people and assaulted me over a period of months while cosplaying as my wife that she also murdered, that you also murdered in a different timeline, but let's not talk about that. But, she is pregnant with my child, so I might as well try and be a good Christian boy and make this relationship work.
Her evil sister carrying my child. It's painful for me. And yet there's some part of me that can't help but feel happy.
Robin, please seek help. And listen, if Zelena can get a redemption arc after all that, why can't Regina? After the fairy tale characters regain their memories and realize Regina is the evil queen who killed their loved ones and forced them from their homeland into this land of torture and despair known as Maine, they are understandably, a bit upset. But what they don't understand is that was all in Regina's past. And she's different now.
She tried to kill us. Yesterday.
No, she didn't. She's trying to change for Henry. He believes in her.
Regina's primary motivation throughout the show is her love for Henry and her desperation for Henry to love her in return. This stems largely from her own loveless and abusive relationship with her mother, Cora. And Emma is not just the person who is destined to break Regina's curse. Emma is more than anything the biggest perceived threat to Regina's relationship with her adopted son.
I've changed every diaper, soothed every fever, endured every tantrum. You may have given birth to him, but he is my son.
And so in season 2, when Emma and Snow White are trapped in the enchanted forest with Cora, who is threatening to come to Maine and destroy everything, Regina is initially more than willing to sacrifice Emma and destroy the portal back to Maine. I mean, 2 birds with 1 stone. But she relents because, Henry might be a tad upset at Regina if she were to kill his birth mom in cold blood. And that is not the best start to a rebuilt relationship between them.
You said you wanted to change. You want me to have faith in you? Have faith in me.
And so Regina must face her mommy issues head on as Cora comes to Storybrooke, hell-bent on destroying this town and everyone in it, because she's evil. Regina enters her attempt at a redemption arc, lasagna in hand.
Oh, I made lasagna.
What's the secret ingredient? Poison?
Red pepper flakes.
Yes, Regina is still a tad upset that her mom killed Regina's one true love in cold blood in front of her. But if her and Henry's relationship is not beyond repair, why not her and her own mom's? It also helps that Cora raises the very valid question of, whether this redemption arc for Regina is even worth it. Like, is this town of people that you cursed for nearly 30 years ever truly going to accept you as one of their own? And if they won't be your friend, why not just murder them all? A dilemma we can all relate to. Just when Cora and Regina's relationship is on the verge of healing into something truly beautiful, when Regina thinks that she's not only saving Cora, but the entire town from destruction, Snow White tricks Regina into cursing and killing Cora, her own mother.
You would have been enough.
Yeah, that's gonna put a damper in the whole redemption arc thing. Once again, Regina is back to deciding whether she's going to be good or evil. But more or less, Regina becomes a begrudging member of the good guys by season 3. It may be very tropey, but I am a sucker for a redeemed villain who, despite being good now, maintains their status as a professional hater.
Or we make you tell us.
Threatening her isn't the way to motivate her.
Well, I'm all out of fish food.
Her methods may not always be goody two-shoes, but at least her heart is in the right place now. It serves as a good balance to Snow and Charming's perpetual cornball behavior.
This is not how we do things, Emma. We can find another way to get to Henry.
Really?
As I said, Regina's primary motivation for her own redemption arc is Henry, wanting to have that relationship with him that she never got to have with her own mother. But Henry's birth mother being back in the picture means that not only must she earn Henry's forgiveness, but Emma's too. And that creates the most compelling relationship on the show by far. Emma is Regina's perfect foil. They both have these hardened exteriors motivated by years of family trauma, but where Regina fails, Emma succeeds. Despite being absent from Henry's life for the first 10 years, Henry immediately accepts Emma as his mom. Emma is just as good, if not better, at magic without even really having to try. Emma is the product of true love between Regina's biggest ops, Snow and Prince Charming. But at the end of the day, Emma and Regina both love Henry. And each other? ? Oh, Swanqueen. Don't let the clunky ship name fool you. This is everything. To me. In the first 2 seasons, these two are sworn enemies and both go to extreme lengths to keep the other away from their son. But as the show goes on, despite everything, despite Regina separating Emma from her family for 28 years and then gaslighting her son, they become co-parents. And not just in a begrudging, court-mandated kind of way. They grow a deep respect and care for each other because they both love Henry and know the other would do anything to protect him.
You may not be strong enough. Maybe we are.
Of course, y'all have heard of enemies to lovers, but have you ever heard of enemies to complicated, platonic co-parents? I don't think so.
Mom, this is insane. What are we supposed to do? Draw a key?
All we need to do is figure it out before Gold does.
This is the kind of innovation that excites. This shared bond over Henry connects them deeply. In season 4, when darkness is about to absorb Regina's life force, Emma runs forward and sacrifices herself, tethering the darkness to herself because she can't watch Regina's happiness be destroyed.
Emma! No! There has to be another way. You worked too hard to have your happiness destroyed.
Now, of course, her last words in this scene before becoming the Dark One is literally, "I love you" to Captain Hook. So the romantic subtext of this scene very much feels unintentional as far as Regina and Emma go. But imagine, Emma and Regina have a love for each other that they simply do not have for even their romantic partners because they value the other as the mother of their child in a totally straight way.
He's my son.
He's my son too.
Let's be honest, if you're looking for it, there are many instances throughout the show that seem kind of gay, if you choose to see it that way, which I do.
You're the only one who will get past their feelings and do what is necessary.
destroy me.
Emma and Regina literally wrestling each other in a closet. This line.
How to get this savior to taste my forbidden fruit.
This scene.
I didn't come for dinner. And what did you come for? You.
Henry always referring to them as his moms.
Hate to think straight about this. You don't get to tell me what to do.
Moms, please.
Typically, most co-parents either are or were previous romantic partners. There's an association there. There has been a lot of criticism over the years that Oat queer-baited. When it comes to characters like Mulan and Aurora, I think that criticism is totally warranted. But when it comes to Regina and Emma, maybe this is me being naive, but I genuinely don't think that the writers ever intended for the viewer to find romantic subtext in their relationship. It wasn't like the writers were constantly putting in fan servicey homoerotic jokes the way BBC's Sherlock did, or Supernatural did. I think it's just that their relationship fits neatly into tropes we're familiar with, and they just have a deeply intense relationship, friendship at a minimum, that we don't usually get to see between two women on a TV show. The actors had great chemistry. Emma and Regina scenes are just way more fun to watch than Emma and Hook, for me personally. The bob is certainly not beating the allegations, nor is that red leather jacket. Of course, this is all well and good, but then I remember that Regina is quite literally Emma's step-grandma. So, if they did make it canon, that would, that would complicate things. Swanqueen as a relationship feels perfect for edits, fan fiction, but I do feel like the payoff wouldn't have been as great as the journey. But also, as long as we're talking about shipping, I might as well get real controversial. Guys, is this a safe space? Like, really, is it? Because I don't like Captain Swan. And no, the ship names do not get better. They only get worse from here. Captain Swan is the ship name, no pun intended, for the relationship of Emma and Captain Hook, of Peter Pan fame. The pair meet in season 2, where Hook is working for Cora, but Hook has no real loyalty. He helps Emma and Cora, depending on who he thinks will help him, exact his revenge on the crocodile, who is Rumpelstiltskin. Not a literal crocodile, just a man in desperate need of a Peach and Lily overnight mask. See, Hook wants revenge because Hook had an affair with Rumpel's wife, Mila, and in a fit of incel rage, Rumpel killed Mila in front of Hook. Much to consider. I think the Oat writers realized that they messed up big time by killing off pre-50 Shades of Grey fame Jamie Dornan, and so they essentially recreated this ambiguous, dark, sexy man working for the villain despite his, unfettered attraction to Emma.
Perhaps you're the one who couldn't handle it.
Only this time they really upped the innuendos.
If a woman comes to you and begs you to take her away, is that theft?
Normally, I prefer to do other more enjoyable activities with a woman on her back.
And my hook, may I have it back? Or is there another attachment you prefer?
Hook really resembled the bad boy protagonist of those 90s romance novels your mom would always leave on the drying machine. It's actually a little outrageous, the lines Disney let Oat get away with, Hook saying throughout the show. Like, I feel like I'm interrupting something. I don't feel like I can watch this in my living room.
Something smells delicious.
It's just from a box.
I'm not talking about the pancakes.
Listen, he may have kidnapped and tortured the town therapist, killed Emma's grandpa, unprompted, among many other crimes, but isn't he just so dreamy?
Perhaps gratitude isn't all now.
Well, the fans of Once Upon a Time certainly thought so. What was initially just meant to be a spicy side character in the season 2 arc, he turned into the central romantic relationship of the show. Only Hook's popularity posed a major problem. See, Emma was already spoken for. Neal, Henry's dad, Emma's past lover, had just been introduced. And Neal wasn't just some rando either. Rumpelstiltskin, another main character of the show, lost his son Balefire in the Enchanted Forest and spent every moment after that searching for his son, even going so far as to help Regina make the Dark Curse, the inciting incident of the show, so that he could get to the real world and find his son. Neal, unbeknownst to Emma when she met him, was Balefire. So Neal also had a traumatic family relationship to both the fantastical and the real world. And yes, almost all of the characters have like 3 different names. You just kind of have to get with the program with that. It's confusing, I know. Neal and Emma met doing Grand Theft Auto when Emma was 17. These two spent their days doing grand larceny together in the quirky, fun way that white people are known to do. But one day, Pinocchio shows up to tell Neal that Emma is in fact destined to save Storybrooke, and if Emma is to fulfill her destiny, Neal has to let her get arrested, because I guess that's the only way to fully cut contact. There's no other option. Leaving a confused 18-year-old Emma to give birth to their son Henry in jail before putting him up for adoption. It is, unclear how old Neal is supposed to be at this point. He is played by an actor well into his 30s, both in present day and in the flashback where Emma is 18, but also Emma is played by the same actress, so I don't really know. But when Neal first came to the real world, when he still went by Balefire, he actually landed in Victorian England, and then he went to Neverland, where he aged at a much slower rate because magic and Juvederm. At a minimum, he is several hundred years old, and even in the most generous of timelines, he conceived Henry with Emma when she was freshly 18, possibly younger, and Emma had no knowledge of his true age or who he actually was. To make things even more awkward, Neal actually hung out with Captain Hook as a teenager in Neverland. Captain Hook, for a time, was sort of Neal's father figure. That is until Balefire made the awkward discovery that Hook had a suspiciously sticky picture of Bay's mom in his dresser.
We ran off together. She abandoned me. We talked about going back for you when you were old enough.
Everyone is related in this show. The sooner you get that, the better. So Rumpelstiltskin has spent his entire life looking for his son Bay since he abandoned him, tracks him down with Emma in New York City, only to realize, hey, we both know that guy. That's the same guy. Emma then has to unravel that not only is Neal back in her life, but that Neal lied to her about his own connection to the fairy tale world. So now Rumpelstiltskin, Emma, and Neal all have to reconcile their extremely convoluted and traumatic shared history filled with childhood abandonment, on top of Emma and Neal now co-parenting their son Henry with Regina the Evil Queen. So we first learned about Balefire 3 episodes into the series. Sensing that his dad, Rumpelstiltskin, was getting corrupted by dark magic as the Dark One, Balefire tried to convince Rumpel to give up magic and start a new life with him in a land without magic, where they could just be together. And although Rumpel initially agreed, in the end he was too scared to give up his power and be evil and stuff, and he didn't follow Bay through the portal. This then motivates Rumpel to help create the Dark Curse as a way to get back to the land without magic, where he knows his son is, so that he can finally repair that relationship. Actually, Rumpel's original plan was, once he found Balefire, was to turn him back into a little boy, which, considering he is now named Neal and is fully a father, that would have been a little twisted.
I can turn the clock back. Make you 14 again.
14? I don't want to be 14.
The revelation that Henry's father, Emma's love, was actually Balefire is a big deal. Neal and Emma have this shared history of both being from the Enchanted Forest, but growing up in the real world. They both have been separated from their family for decades and now have to repair these relationships. Do they even want to repair those relationships when their parents chose for them to be separated in the first place? They both have to now build a relationship with their son, who neither got to know until just now. Neal being the central figure in Rumpel's origin story, one of the most compelling characters in the show, meant there was a lot of potential for Neal's character. Neal didn't just exist as a love interest for Emma. He was already integral to the plot on his own. And yes, Hook also had a vague connection because, he hooked up with Rumpel's ex-wife, but no one cares about that. And also, let's just be honest, compared to Hook, Neal was just not nearly horny enough to appeal to both crazed teenage Tumblr fans and Midwestern moms. And so it seems the only solution the writers could come to was to unceremoniously kill Neal off almost as soon as he was introduced, to make way for the new hottest fairy tale character in town.
No, I can fix this. I can.
Perhaps gratitude is in order now.
So let's get this straight. Hook sort of raised Neal as a teenager, but also hooked up with Neal's mom. And before Neal's body was even cold, Hook moved in on Emma, who is Neal's one true love. And despite Emma being in love with Neal for more than a decade, she was surprisingly quick to move on with this new man she'd just known for a few weeks. I am convinced that plot lines and dialogue that was originally meant for Neal was just copy and pasted for Hook. Because how are we meant to believe that Emma and Hook are this close with this little history?
To believe that I could find someone else. That is until I met you.
Is it because they both wear leather jackets? Is that the only true basis for this relationship? But of course, to make Hook a true viable love interest for Emma, the writers had to scrap Hook's initial characterization as this man who only acts in his own interest. Hook can't be a morally ambiguous deviant who will do anything for his own selfish gain. He's a yearner. At a monumental scale. You can make that Hook hand work. Did we mention how sexy he is? But also such a soft boy, so sweet and soft. I also love how throughout the show, despite everyone else changing clothes on a daily basis, you know how people do, Hook only had 2 outfits. Long leather jacket, short leather jacket. I just know that that man stank. At the end of the day, the writers knew what the fans wanted, and they were more than willing to appease with fan service, as long as it was in a very straight way. It's not even that I was a fan of Neal, but it is just wild to see this character who is clearly hinted at and meant to be built up for this grand reveal, both in Emma and Rumpel's past, just to see him get killed off and almost never mentioned again within episodes of introducing him. Like, that's insane. Even when Emma is in this Wish universe where she has everything that she ever wanted, Neal is still dead in that universe.
Your father would be very proud of you.
I wish I'd known him.
He's watching over you.
The disrespect is crazy. I love how cartoonishly down bad the Hook character is, but let's not pretend his character was written with the strength to become a main cast member for half the show. I just don't buy it. There's this one time where Zelina, the Wicked Witch, jumps out and curses Hook's lips.
She cursed me. My lips, actually.
Which lips, I know you're asking? Good question. Zelina is like Hook. If Emma kisses your lips, again, which lips? Her magic will be totally gone. So I need you to kiss her or I'm gonna kill her son. You have no choice, Hook. And Hook is like, no, I won't do it. I won't let her kiss my lips. I just love the drama of this plotline because truly all Zelina needed to do in this situation was keep her mouth shut. Hook was actively trying to get a smooch from Emma at that moment. Zelina would have gotten the kiss way quicker without all of the dramatics, but you know, that's not as much fun. I at least liked Hook more than the other romantic interests they tried for Emma, like August, who is Pinocchio, who yes, is made out of CGI wood, but is made far more terrifying by his piercing blue eyes. Someone get color contacts for him immediately. August is straight melodrama dude because he shows up randomly in season 1 and is just hanging around on his motorcycle with this big, suspiciously head-shaped box that he's just begging someone to ask him about.
Your mysterious box. What's in it?
It's awfully frustrating not knowing, isn't it?
What's that?
A box.
What's inside it?
Just something I need to do what I came here for.
Finally, Emma walks up to him and is like, all right, August, I cannot let you stand within 1,000 feet of a playground until you tell me who you are and what is in that goddamn box.
You're gonna have to wait a long time and watch me carry it around, hauling it to strange, mysterious places. What could possibly be inside that box?
And August is like, well, sexy sheriff, I will tell you what's in this box of mine, but only if you let me buy you a drink. A box for box, if you will. Only to reveal that he's carrying around a typewriter like he's goddamn Matty Healy. Like, what was the drama for, really? The show pretty quickly drops the romantic tension between Emma and August, and they revert August back to a little boy. Yeah, the romance is kind of dead at that point. So instead, they have more of a brother-sister relationship that only occasionally teeters into uncomfortable stepbro territory when August becomes an adult again, because he does become an adult again several times. The sheriff and Emma certainly caught a vibe, but of course he was killed off almost instantly in season 1. There's also this other boyfriend that Emma has at one point, but he's like a flying monkey, so that didn't really work out.
I actually kind of liked you.
Who are you?
As much as the show tried, it seems like Hook was just the best option Emma got. I mean, You know who her real best option was, but I can't get started on that again. The family tree. If you know anything about Once Upon a Time, it is probably that the family tree is not so much a bunch of branches, but in fact, one big circle. See, the only way the writers knew how to add stakes to relationships on this show was to make them either romantic or family, making for one of the most convoluted webs of connections you ever did see.
You've been with my former lover and my son.
In fairness, the show was very self-aware of the absurdity of this, and, self-awareness is the first step to getting help.
So Rumpelstiltskin is Henry's grandfather? But I'm his grandfather.
You can have more than one.
I do not think it's worth going through the entire family tree here. That is a dissertation in itself, but I did want to highlight some of my favorite family connections. Hook, of course, dates Mila. Also dates Mila's son. No, doesn't date Mila's son. Dates Mila's son's baby mama, Emma. You might also notice here that Hook has two brothers, both named Liam. Not a mistake. You see, when Hook was but a child, his dad sold Hook and his older brother, Liam, to One Direction, aka a life of indentured servitude on a sailboat. Liam number 1 dies. I just realized I'm making a joke about One Direction and a character named Liam. That was not ideal, unintentional. Anyways, Liam number 1 dies. Hook's dad reads Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis and starts a new life as a good person. And he feels so bad about selling his first 2 kids off into slavery that he has a 3rd kid, which he names Liam in honor of his first kid. Killian, Captain Hook, the perpetual middle child, does not get an honorary baby named after him. So Hook has 2 brothers named Liam. Hook then kills his dad in front of baby Liam. And I'm gonna be honest, y'all, sometimes I wasn't always paying attention to these episodes, and I thought that this was like an alternate timeline version of his big brother Liam, which made this very confusing for me. But no, different Liam. There is an alternate timeline Captain Hook, who they initially put in a fat suit to differentiate, which, was not ideal to watch, but they got tired of that really quickly. They wanted the sexy Hook back, and so they scratched that. Alternate universe Hook is virtually indistinguishable from original Hook, down to them wearing the exact same stinky pleather jacket. I just know you can hear that thing rubbing against his pleather pants from a mile away. Alternate universe Hook meets alternate universe Rapunzel, not to be confused with the original timeline Rapunzel, who has nothing to do with any of this. Alternate universe Hook and alternate universe Rapunzel hook up. Turns out, though, Rapunzel is actually Mother Gothel in disguise. They have a child named Alice. Alice is a lesbian. Zelina, Regina's half-sister, Wicked Witch of the West. Zelina, disguised as Robin's dead wife, tricks Robin into getting her pregnant. We all remember this? Zelina gives birth to a girl who, being redeemed now, she names Robin in honor of Robin, who tragically died. Robin and Alice. Girl Robin and Alice, gay together. Technically no overlap, but we are getting dangerously close to that, are we not? Now, Henry is the craziest because Henry is the adopted son of Regina. Regina is Snow White's stepmom, which means that Regina is also Henry's step-great-grandma. And actually, Henry is his own step-great-uncle. Emma is Henry's mom, but is also his step-niece. Rumpelstiltskin has a situationship with Cora, Zelina, and Regina. It is ambiguous in the early seasons whether Rumpel is the actual biological father of Regina as well. But then the evil half of Regina, who is her own separate autonomous character in season 5.
You call this an entrance, Regina? Well, I suppose I was the one with all the flair.
She hooks up with Rumpel, so they cut that ambiguity real quick. This is a family tree that almost puts the British royal family to shame. Emphasis on almost. Rumpbelle. I warned you, the ship names in this show are just atrocious. Back in 2013, when I first watched this show, my favorite character was Belle, with a bumpet that was always bumped to high heavens and inexplicable Australian accent.
I never wanted you to be perfect.
Just wanted you to try.
And clothes straight from the ModCloth clearance rack I so loved at the time. I mean, what wasn't to love? Except to my horror, upon my rewatch, I realized that my love for Twee had completely blinded me to the truth. Belle is perhaps the most poorly conceived character in the entire franchise, something that would only become more apparent to me as the show continued to degrade in quality past season 3. Belle in this version begs the question, what if Beauty from Beauty and the Beast existed in real life and loved books just as much as she did in the original story, but only read Colleen Hoover? Belle is the type of girl who publicly and proudly announced that she voted for Kamala Harris on her Instagram story, but is uncomfortably defensive of her ratty boyfriend who insists he only uses racial slurs ironically. Belle, as you probably guessed, is Beauty from Beauty and the Beast and largely follows the characterization established by the Disney movie. She loves books. I don't know why I said books like a slur, but there you go. There's this one episode where she decides that she's gonna go monster hunting for no real reason, and none of the other monster hunters like her because she's such a nerd with her books.
You expect to defeat the fiercest creature in the land with a book. Maybe she means to bore it to death.
Oh, you're gonna read where the monster is? Give me a break. The monster, by the way, called the Yowie Gay.
Called the Yaogway.
And of course, Belle, with her big book brains, finds the Yowie Gay all by herself. There's another episode where when Hook and Cora first came to Storybrooke, Hook makes his ship invisible because for some reason he wants it to be a secret how him and Cora managed to get there. But of course, Belle takes out this big old book and is like, of course, Hook came on a ship.
Hook came here on his ship.
As if a pirate would use any other mode of transportation. Do we think he got here on a lime scooter? In Belle's origin story, Belle also sells herself to One Direction, aka Rumpelstiltskin, in exchange for Rumpel's protection of her kingdom from the quote-unquote ogre wars. In spite of her captivity and his face, they fall in love. There is a very boring and surface level criticism I'm sure you've heard many times about Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Isn't this just Stockholm Syndrome? Except no, not really. Despite Belle initially being his captive, Beast quickly sees her as an equal rather than a prisoner in the Disney movie. He shows her kindness, he gives her a library, woos her, and you assume by the end of the story when the Beast is human again, and admittedly way less sexy, that he has learned his lesson, that he will, for the most part, continue to be kind to Belle and other people in their lives. But in Once Upon a Time, that's not really how the story goes. Robert Carlyle as Rumpelstiltskin eats this roll up.
Do you know what this is?
Pure magic.
Pure evil. Time to make a deal.
No! No more deals!
He is having a ball with this character. He's a coward. He's selfish. He is willing to work with the good guys only up to the point where it serves his own interests, and you don't always know what those interests are. He loves his son, he loves Belle, but more than that, he loves power and wielding it over other people, even the ones he supposedly loves most. In season 1 and season 2, it's incredibly compelling to see how he battles his feelings for Bay and Belle and how they contradict his lust for power. These people see good in him that he doesn't see in himself. But it reaches a point where it feels like Belle sees good in this man that simply just doesn't exist at all.
Rumpel, this is what he wants. To destroy every bit of good in you. There's still good in you. I see it. I've always seen it.
Rumpel makes a great villain. He's very fun to watch. And it's kind of interesting to see how Belle softens him, how he gets redeemed. But how do you keep a villain interesting once they're redeemed? Do we really want to see Rumpelstiltskin going to PTA meetings and making pasta salad for the town potluck? We've got 7 22-episode seasons of the show to fill. People loved Rumpel as a villain. People kind of loved seeing Rumpel be redeemed. Why not just repeat that cycle every season over and over again with only the slightest variation?
Rumpel! Hey, let's go! Rumpel! Rumpel, stop it!
In Disney's Beauty and the Beast, when Belle sees good in the Beast, we believe her. When Belle sees good in Rumpelstiltskin, after he once again held her hostage, lied to her, tried to murder his own grandson, and destroy everything she loves for like the 5th time. It's like, Belle, girl, at some point we gotta learn to move on from this.
He needed someone weak, someone he could manipulate. That's not true. He loves me.
This cannot be serving you. Like, some of his lies just feel malicious for the fun of it.
You have to promise me you won't hurt Gaston, no matter what you learn.
Belle, you can trust me.
Rumpelstiltskin is the Dark One, meaning he is the ultimate dark magic wielder. And as the Dark One, he relies on this dagger to wield his power. But if someone else has that dagger, he has to do whatever they say. After Belle and Rumple get married, Belle, by the way, looking like the Queen of England, Rumple, completely unprompted, is like, here, Belle, I'm gonna give you my dagger as a sign of my trust in you. And she's like, oh my gosh, Rumple, I can't accept this. I don't want to control you. But like, okay, fine, I'll take it. Would you believe he gave her a fake dagger and she just has no clue? Guess she didn't read any books on how to spot a forgery, am I right? Of course, when she realizes that he's once again being evil and murdering and lying, she manages to get the real dagger and banish him from ever returning to Storybrooke. Anyways, 2 episodes later, he returns to Storybrooke. There's another point where Belle actually does have Rumple's dagger, and so Rumple disguises himself as Captain Hook, walks up to Belle and is like, hey, Belle, I'm Captain Hook. I bet you put Rumpelstiltskin's dagger in a real safe spot. And she's like, yep, it is so safe right now, you wouldn't even believe. And Rumple, disguised as Captain Hook, is like, well, wouldn't it be even safer, actually, if you took it out of the safe spot and you let me bury it in the yard? And Belle is like, that makes perfect sense. What a randomly generous thing for you to offer, Captain Hook.
I assume you hid the daggers in my safe.
Yeah, of course.
Then we must move it.
But where?
Don't worry about that.
Belle is so book talk brained, it's crazy. The lights are on, but no one is home.
I know you want me back, Rumple. It's never gonna happen.
And she gets back together with Rumple after both of these, again, unprompted betrayals. In one of my favorite moments on this show, Rumple is standing over the town line with Belle. He's about to go on his Jet 2 holiday to find his son. He has a magic scarf that prevents him from getting amnesia if he steps over the town line. But since he only could make one scarf, Belle has to stay behind lest she forget all memory of the time he held her in prison for months on end, God forbid. Just then, Hook shows up and shoots Belle with a gun.
I wouldn't count on it.
Captain Hook is here, and he has a Glock. Hook is then yeeted off his feet by a car, and Belle steps over the town line, instantly forgetting who she is, who Rumple is, or what the hell is going on.
Belle! Who's Belle?
It's episodes like this that really make me miss the cultural impact of Sweeps Week. The one time a year where the writers of your favorite TV show just had to turn one out if they wanted to keep your interest and keep the lights on. Rumple, of course, can heal her gunshot wounds because, magic, but he cannot reverse her amnesia because reasons. True Love's Kiss does not work this time. Why? Who cares? So Belle is still in this town of fairy tale creatures who now know that they're fairy tale creatures, but live in Maine, and she just has no clue about any of that. Until one day the writers have another idea. She doesn't have amnesia now. Now she thinks that her name is Lacey, a la Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh.
Name's Lacey.
I think that the show's explanation is that Lacey is who Belle would have been in the original curse cast by Regina. Belle, by the way, was just kept in a psych ward for 28 years during the curse, so she didn't really have a personality to speak of. She thinks that she's Lacey, this normal person living in Maine, but is also incredibly unimpressed and nonchalant when she's like hanging out with the sheriff of Nottingham. And when she learns that Rumple is Rumpelstiltskin and can do magic, one day she sees Rumple beating a man to death and is like, wait, that's kind of hot.
You really are as dark as people say.
Dark, Gary.
And so then Rumple and Lacey start dating and kicking this man, which feels weird because Lacey is Belle, but also she is nothing like Belle. Kind of makes you question Belle as a character, that it only takes a little amnesia for her to become just as evil as Rumpelstiltskin. Perhaps she doesn't have the moral high ground she so readily assumes. I honestly just feel bad for Belle watching this show because despite her being Henry's grandmother, Rumpelstiltskin's wife, a consistent character across all 7 seasons, no one gives a about this poor girl. There are multiple points on the show where the entire ensemble go off on an adventure and Belle's like, hey guys, you want me to come? And they're like, oh, Belle, actually someone has to stay behind. And it's gotta be you, for sure.
You have to stay here.
No, why? I want to help.
The town is no longer safe.
They take Henry, a child, to hell, but they won't take Belle. I think Henry has school tomorrow, guys. As Belle and Rumple's relationship gets more toxic across the seasons, I just refuse to believe that any of these people are Belle's friends, because do they say anything about this? Even once? No. No, they don't. Sometimes it feels like Belle and Rumple's relationship is meant to resemble loving an addict. Like it has the good moments, but then there are these relapses, but you still want to love the person that you know that they could be if they weren't in that situation. Belle sees good in him and wants to believe he can stay sober, which is a metaphor for being good. But he always goes back to being evil, which again in this metaphor would be addiction? That can't be intentional. It's just strange because anytime Rumple and Belle reconcile, we as the audience are clearly meant to root for them. We're not supposed to question this clearly abusive and toxic dynamic. They have Belle and Rumpelstiltskin recreate the ballroom scene from Beauty and the Beast like 4 different times just to be like, remember guys, they're actually meant for each other. They're actually really cute. This is good, actually. Who cares if Rumple sold him and Belle's child to the god of the underworld one time? Look how they slow dance. It is unfathomable. It really is. The Frozen arc. As I said, I watched the show as it aired back in the 2010s religiously. On my Tumblr, you will find a lot of edits of that Peter Pan, because is it really a surprise that 14-year-old me had a crush on Peter Pan? Probably not. But despite my love for this show, I stopped watching partway through season 4. And in fact, I was very angry about it. I was incensed. And it was for a very specific reason. One of my favorite aspects of the show in the early seasons was it was this sort of a modern take on fairy tales. So bad Cinderella coded. Even though the show certainly leaned on the Disney version of these characters in terms of their visuals, their origin, the oat versions of these characters were their own distinct thing. If you look at, for example, Sleeping Beauty's styling in season 2, it is clear that her outfits are reminiscent of the Disney cartoon, and her name is Aurora. So very direct in that sense, but her personality and her looks are not meant to be a copy. Belle's outfits are probably the closest to the Disney version, but they are still distinctly made to suit a non-animated character. The Oat writers were also not afraid to go completely off the walls. In Cinderella's origin story, instead of being saved by the fairy godmother, Rumpelstiltskin just blows up the fairy godmother within like the first 5 minutes of the episode.
To your prince. And to
and then he tries to buy her baby. This isn't your Cinderella. Belle is Beauty from Beauty and the Beast, but the Beast isn't a prince who was cursed to become a sexy furry that I wish. It's Rumpelstiltskin, a cowardly, selfish man who took on the powers of the Dark One, which yes, changed his appearance, but also made him prone to darkness, evilness. It follows the spirit of Beauty and the Beast, but it also is its own thing. I think it's worth saying that their choice to include Frozen happened at the absolute peak of Frozen mania, which purely from a business perspective makes perfect sense. I honestly had no right to be pissed off because I should have seen it coming. Don't get me wrong, I saw Frozen twice in theaters. It's a cute movie. But if you're a teenager who thinks they're too cool to participate in monoculture enjoyed by children, there was a point where I was just a little sick of it, okay? I was a little sick of Frozen. Let It Go was cute, but did I need to hear it every day for a year wherever I went? Perhaps not. So I was already skeptical going into this because I, for one, did not want more Frozen content. In fact, quite the opposite. So when season 4 comes back in full swing, I could immediately tell that Frozen was not going to get the same oat treatment that other fairy tales, even Disney ones, had gotten in the past. Just visually, you can see that Oat wanted to emulate the animated movie as close as possible. And again, of course they did. It was the most popular thing that Disney had made in almost 2 decades. This wasn't a property meant for reinventing. It was a modern Disney project meant to be capitalized on. With it being such a recent property and such a popular property, of course people are going to have clearer memories of what the animated characters look and act like compared to Sleeping Beauty. So there is an even higher expectation that the live action counterparts perfectly match that. They can't cash in on this property if casual fans don't immediately recognize the Frozen characters as they know them originally, which is an incredibly high bar for the Frozen actors to meet. But to their credit, the casting for Once Upon a Time honestly went crazy. Elizabeth Lail especially, just the animated Anna come to life. Not just visually, in her performance as well. She killed it.
And because I'm a good judge of character.
Says the girl who agreed to marry Hans 10 minutes after you started talking to him.
I was young and naive.
You met me the next day.
Younger.
And the other casting choices are pretty uncanny as well. Importantly, you can see that unlike previous Disney characters, they've opted to literally recreate the outfits and sets from the animated version. For Anna, that look is pretty successfully executed, but because it's an exact recreation of a cartoony dress, it does make Anna look more cartoony than the other Haute princesses. But I mean, Anna is nothing compared to Elsa. Cosplayers, stage performers, and Once Upon a Time alike have all struggled to translate the animated Elsa ice dress to real life. Let's be so serious, it's not really a dress that is meant to translate to real life. I think to be a successful recreation, if you will, the look needs to be more evocative of the animated dress rather than a carbon copy. Elsa's dress on Once Upon a Time is comically bad. They don't even attempt to blend the clearly separate corset top and skirt. In the movie, this is a dress literally constructed out of ice. I'm sorry, but visible elastic seam lines just don't look like ice. She looks more like she stumbled out of a Spirit Halloween on November 1st with the only cold Ice Queen sparkly blonde braid outfit they had left on the shelf. It's interesting because when Elsa first briefly appeared at the end of season 3, her dress is actually more in line with what we would expect from Once Upon a Time. They've added gold embellishments, they've darkened the color palette, there's an ornate sort of celestial neckline with the cape, but I guess by the time we got to season 4, they were cowards. The first few episodes of Once Upon a Time season 4 are also just filled to the brim with very on-the-nose references to the animated movie.
Says the girl who agreed to marry Hans 10 minutes after you started talking to him.
Have you ever made a snowman come to life? It's the best.
Have you tried building an ice palace yet?
Yes.
And we shall send you straight back to Weaselton.
It's pronounced Wesselton.
Which brought an already corny show to another level for me. In fact, I remember the exact line that made me close my laptop and abandon the show for basically a decade.
Aren't you cold? I'm freezing. It's never bothered me.
I still had an awareness of the show through Tumblr, but in my mind, Frozen had completely ruined an otherwise flawless show. Instead of reinventing or changing beloved fairy tales, the show just felt like a glorified advertisement for recent Disney properties. Of course, at 14, I was not smart enough to understand that that was always the intention of this show, but with Frozen, it was just so blatant that even I couldn't ignore it. And I felt justified in that belief because then when I saw clips from season 5, they had introduced Merida, who once again looked like a cheap Spirit Halloween version of the animated characters. I was watching the show flop in real time and it was devastating to me. However, on my rewatch of the show, I realized something. The Frozen arc? Actually not nearly as bad as I thought it was. Don't get me wrong, the show really only had 2 iconic seasons. Once Upon a Time peaked in season 2. Season 3 was pretty good. Season 4 was okay. Season 5 and 6 are so disastrously terrible, it made the Frozen arc look like Succession. My original complaint about Frozen was that it felt like a cheap recreation of the animated movie with no attempt at reimagining it. But actually, that's not entirely true. In fact, if I'd given it like an episode more of a chance, I would have been introduced to one of the strongest villains the show ever had, Ingrid, the Snow Queen. I think because they were perhaps too afraid to deviate from Elsa, the Disney character, they introduced a second character who would also be based off the Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, who was Elsa's aunt. Like Elsa, Ingrid has magical ice powers that she struggles to control, which makes her a freak. After she accidentally kills a man who was trying to kidnap her and her 2 sisters as a child, deserved, her 2 sisters vow to protect Ingrid. But when Ingrid accidentally kills her younger sister, whoopsies, she becomes an outcast. All Ingrid wants is to have that relationship with her 2 sisters again and be understood by her family. One thing I liked actually that they retained from the animated movie is that Elsa and Anna are immediately so accepting of each other. On Once Upon a Time, no one has a good relationship with any of their family members. So it was a refreshing change of pace for the show. Ingrid sees Elsa and Emma as two other magical outcasts, basically as substitutes for her sisters that can rule the world with her.
Elsa and I are your real family because we're the only ones like you. We belong together.
They do shoehorn in this weird plot where suddenly Snow White and Prince Charming are like magic phobic.
They may love you, but they also fear you.
No, they don't.
You've never seen them wince at your power?
Despite Emma previously only having light magic, which she could always control.
It's just, magic. I've been practicing to try to capture the Snow Queen. Okay.
But now she can't control her powers. She's blowing up buildings and accidentally hitting her dad with a lamppost.
Just stay away. Let me go. David! Emma!
Do I feel bad for Prince Charming? No, not at all. Hit him harder. They also throw in this fun plot twist where Ingrid was actually Emma's foster parent in the real world. So Ingrid has sort of been grooming and stalking Emma since she was a child. Sinister. Elizabeth Mitchell is another lost actor cast on Once Upon a Time, and she eats this role up.
What did you do to me? Well, I did show you who you really are.
She is menacing, but also vulnerable.
They love me for who I am, including my powers.
I thought that once too, Emma.
She feels like the early drafts of Elsa's character, before Disney decided that instead of being a villain, she would be a second protagonist. Honestly, as long as you ignore the obnoxious Frozen movie references, it's a very solid arc in the show. But of course, then there are the arcs I hated. Let's be haters for a second, because up until this point, I have been nothing but charitable. I don't think this is going to surprise other fans of Once Upon a Time, but pretty much every plot that annoyed me are in the stinky doo-doo seasons that are season 5 and season 6. There's this one arc where Emma becomes the Dark One, and even though every other Dark One has this scaly lizard skin, for Emma, she just wears a different leather jacket instead of her red one, and she spray paints her hair white. I don't know why they didn't just get a wig. I don't know what was going on with this costume design, but I know that the color theory girls on Instagram Reels were losing it. Captain Hook also becomes the Dark One, but he literally doesn't change at all, and in fact doesn't even know that he's the Dark One for like 10 episodes. But once he does know that he's the Dark One, he immediately decides that he might as well kill everyone in town.
You tried to stop me from knowing the truth, and now I'm going to return the favor.
Geez, Hook, kind of seems like you were waiting for an excuse to do that one. It's funny because not only do they refuse to make their sexy leads even a little bit ugly for this arc, but they actually don't want Emma to be beyond redemption as the Dark One. First of all, she only became the Dark One because she wanted to save Regina. So her friends and family aren't even upset with her for acting evil, being the Dark One.
Now you're on your own. You can do it, Mom. You can be the savior.
It's not going to happen.
Emma is just acting like that one scene from Meet the Robinsons.
Hey, Goop, what's up? Cool binder. Hey, Goop, want to come over to my house today?
They all hated me.
And she doesn't really do anything evil. She just kind of sits around moodily and speaks in this low monotone.
It didn't work because there's nothing to fix. This is who I am now. Why can't you accept that? Why can't anyone accept that?
Well, she does kidnap Rumpel and Merida.
I need you to make him brave.
But I would argue that those two had it coming. Let Emma Swan be ugly. Spread the word. Gideon. Okay, anything Belle and Rumpel centric, just automatically, I hate it. Can't be good. So one time, Rumpel sold him and Belle's baby to the Lord of the Underworld and lied about it for months. Belle, understandably, not so sure if she wants to take Rumpel back this time. I mean, this time it's over for real.
I never wanted you to be perfect. Just wanted you to try.
Belle, while pregnant, has a vision of her baby, except he's not a baby. He's a strange, boyish man with a bowl cut who says, "Goo goo gaga mommy, I'm your favorite unborn baby, but also I have a finasteride prescription and an investment account. Do not let Rumpelstiltskin near me or you will literally traumatize me for life." Plus, Rumpel is doing all this weird stuff at the time, like he's trying to sacrifice Emma to the darkness, and he really wants to force his unborn child to love him via some dark, evil magic.
Maybe He can love me. I cannot let you take our child away from me.
You know, the vibes are not great at that time, so Rumpbelle decides that he actually doesn't care whether Belle loves him or not, and he's just gonna take their son by force, no matter what. Rumpbelle starts murdering nuns, which Belle interprets as a direct threat against her. She's correct, by the way. Belle is so afraid of Rumpbelle being near their child that she sends the blue fairy off with their kid to hide him from Rumpbelle, presumably for the rest of his life. And Rumpelstiltskin has the goddamn nerve to walk in and say Belle abandoned their son?
You abandoned our son?
Rich coming from this lifelong deadbeat dad. Unfortunately, their son Gideon is kidnapped by the Black Fairy.
Now, I know nothing about this fairy, but I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, she's my mother.
Who is, of course, also Rumpelstiltskin's mom, because everyone is related, but also all roughly the same age. And she tortures Gideon for fun his entire childhood. Gideon then comes to Storybrooke and he's like, okay, in order to kill my grandma, the Black Fairy, I need to become the savior, because there is a prophecy that says that the savior will defeat her. Except Emma Swan is the savior, and I could just ask Emma Swan to do it, but I want to be the savior. And despite there already canonically being at least 3 other saviors at this point on the show, Gideon must kill Emma, who has done absolutely nothing wrong to him, by the way, to absorb Emma's power and become the savior himself. Belle, of course, the perpetual white man apologist, is like, Emma, my son may have tried to kill you unprompted, but I swear he's actually a good boy, and please don't hurt him. Please save him.
Okay, Emma, please don't hurt Gideon. He was not born evil. No, she made him this way.
And Emma is like, fine, this is once upon a time. I can just talk to him, I guess, and we'll make Gideon a good boy. So Emma does that. Sick. Except actually this whole time, the Black Fairy has had Gideon's heart and can control his every move. So he now has no choice except to be evil.
I was under your thrall. I had no choice.
But part of you wanted to help me, though, didn't it?
Of course, Mother.
Because why let your character have agency when you can just have them be mind-controlled by the main villains whenever the plot demands it? The Black Fairy was pretty diva, though.
Your plan failed.
Did it?
Greg and Tamara, back in season 2. Hey, look, even season 2 had its flaws. When Neal is first revealed as Bay, Neal comes to Storybrooke to get to know his son. The only thing is, though, Neal also has a totally normal fiance named Tamara who has no idea that Neal and everyone else here are fairy tale creatures and it's supposed to be a big secret. And they live in Maine. At the beginning of season 2, the townsfolk have magic. They know that they're fairy tale creatures, but they cannot leave town because then they will get amnesia and revert back to when they were cursed. But normal people can come and go from Storybrooke whenever they want. And this raises an interesting predicament. How does this town of fairy tale creatures protect themselves from strangers who, if those strangers discovered that magic existed, would definitely want to exploit these magical freaks for nefarious purposes? Northrop Grumman would absolutely set up a local office in Storybrooke. It wouldn't be good. Tamara takes the news that everyone here is an alternate reality fictional character surprisingly well. Emma is immediately suspicious of her, and for good reason. Tamara says that she's training for a marathon. No one does that. She's evil. Turns out Tamara and her boy toy Greg, yes, we're supposed to believe that Greg bagged Tamara, whatever. These two are kind of like those evangelical parents back in the day who wouldn't let their kids read Harry Potter because magic is bad. They are actually undercover to destroy magic, and they're working for a super secret international organization against magic. There's this one scene where Tamara is in Thailand, and this guy named the Dragon is like, Tamara, if you're gonna destroy magic, you're gonna have to go through me first. And she just absolutely nukes him with a taser.
You haven't met me.
It's honestly kind of iconic. Even though the dragon definitely died in that scene, they do bring him back in season 5. But yeah, what's this organization? How big is it? Who runs it? Sounds so mysterious. Sounds like a big external threat. This could be interesting, right? Maybe, I guess. Actually, the secret organization they're working for doesn't even exist. These two, Greg and Tamara, are actually just big dum-dums because they thought they were working to destroy magic, but actually Peter Pan hired them, even though he's in Neverland, an entirely different world. Maybe Indeed.com works over there, or LinkedIn Easy Apply. I don't know the situation. But now that Greg and Tamara have served their purpose, they are so dead, and we never worry about the outside world learning magic exists ever again for the rest of the show. Then when we actually get to the Peter Pan arc, for me the best part of the show, Peter Pan, this teenage boy, guess who he's related to?
Hello, Papa.
Of course. To look at my son here at the end and really see him and think about what might have been.
Do you see the family resemblance? He is Rumpelstiltskin's dad, who transformed himself into a little boy because that's what he wanted. And Peter Pan disguises his shadow as Rumple's girlfriend Belle to seduce Rumple. This is a real thing that happened. It's a little Kafka on the shore, if you ask me. So Peter Pan wants Henry, his great-grandson, because Henry has the heart of the truest believer. And if Peter can take Henry's heart, he will get to be young forever. So Henry, being the big old dummy that he is, yanks out his own heart, and his parents, Regina, Emma, and Neal, who Henry at this point in the show thought was dead, but is alive now and is here to save him. They're all like, "Stop, Henry, this is a pervy old man here to trick you." And Henry is like, "Oh my God, my parents, you're just in time to watch me kill myself." Henry is exhausting. He is a child, so I can accept him being naive, but oh man, this arc would have been a lot shorter if he just used some critical thinking for a second. See, I ended the section about things I hate with a thing that I love. But actually, let's be negative again, like for real this time. Easily, one of the biggest fumbles of this entire franchise is Mulan. Mulan was introduced in season 2 as a friend of Prince Philip. That makes her sound like she's like a side character on The Real Housewives, but just stick with me. She helped Prince Philip get back to his love, Sleeping Beauty, and wake her from the sleeping curse. And immediately when Aurora wakes up, she's like, "Oh, you have a female friend, Philip? This is just your totally platonic gal pal you made while I was asleep? I'm suspicious of you, Mulan, in a deeply heterosexual way." Even though I think Mulan was pretty transparently written to have an unrequited love for Philip, as always with this show, the women-loving women, enemies to lovers subtext of Mulan and Aurora's relationship was the much more compelling story, definitely on Tumblr, but also I think in general. Philip also gets banished somewhere, I forget where he goes, pretty quickly after he's introduced. So the relationship we actually see develop is the relationship between Mulan and Aurora, how they mistrust each other. Mulan initially seeming stoic and uncaring, whereas Aurora seems selfish and unaware. But in order to survive, they develop this strong friendship.
I vowed to Prince Philip to protect you. The only reason I'm here is because you and Philip risked your lives to save me.
The two had such strong chemistry that it was actually a running joke between the Mulan and Aurora actresses that their characters were just in love with each other.
No, I'm not leaving without you.
I can't be trusted, not as long as Cora has my heart.
Then I will get it back for you.
Oh, no.
Tumblr, ravenous for this pairing, myself included. And the thing is, the writers knew it. I could see a world where Mulan was perhaps written with this queer storyline in mind from the beginning, but more realistically, I think a bunch of writers just unintentionally wrote a relationship with queer subtext. This is just me speculating, pure tinfoil hat moment. I just don't believe that Disney would have allowed their IP, Mulan or Aurora, to have a prominent queer storyline in like the way that Emma and Hook existed, or Snow and Prince Charming. These weren't just characters based off the original folklore of Sleeping Beauty or Mulan. This was a show produced on ABC that was heavily reliant on the Disney versions of fairy tales. It's why Belle has a yellow ball gown, why Cinderella has a mouse friend named Gus, why Philip and Aurora are called Philip and Aurora instead of Briar Rose and Prince. This was a show ultimately beholden to a major network. And so imagine my surprise when in season 3, Mulan seems prepared to confess her romantic feelings to Aurora. Except she stops herself when she hears that Aurora is pregnant with Philip's baby. Considering Philip woke Aurora up with True Love's kiss on their first episode appearance, really this Mulan-Aurora relationship was doomed from the start. But man, in that moment, Jamie Chung acts out this scene with all of the heartbreak of 1,000 lesbians. So Mulan backs out of confessing and instead commits to joining Robin's gang of merry men. Not only does she not get her girl, she resigns herself to a life surrounded entirely not by girls. It's actually tragic, but also historic. This was Once Upon a Time's first canonically queer character, a Disney show in 2013 before gay marriage was legal in all 50 states. It took a tired trope, two female characters fighting over a man, and turned it into something totally unprecedented for the time. Jamie Chung, in interviews at the time, was thrilled that the writers had finally agreed to go for it, and said that she would love to come back and continue this storyline if Once Upon a Time wanted her back. Wait, if? Oh, right. Jamie Chung at this point had already signed on to another project with J.J. Abrams, also related to the Lost Universe. So going into this, the writers knew that after Mulan made her confession, their ability to actually continue that storyline, no matter how the fans responded, was incredibly limited. And I'm sure that is just pure coincidence. Of course, Mulan's queerness also caused a lot of backlash. For every lesbian on Tumblr, there were equally ravenous Disney moms who could not stand even the implication that these two gorgeous women might just be in love with each other. God forbid. It is actually interesting how this Mulan confession, as it played out on the show, in the long run managed to fail both sides of their fan base. Because just as quickly as Mulan was out of the closet, she was cast aside. Not as brutally as Cass from Supernatural, but still. The last we see of her is her heartbroken and alone. Then not a word in reference to her for 2 whole seasons. We never see her and Aurora interact on screen again. But in the promotion for season 5, the Oat writers were out again, teasing that not only would there be a new queer storyline this season, but their first openly queer character, Mulan, would be making a return. Of course, when Hollywood Reporter asked if that meant Mulan and Aurora were finally getting their happy ending, they were quick to say, now, we can't confirm or deny which characters are going to be gay, but rest assured, we've gotten permission from the higher-ups to do something. But the writers weren't done teasing, because they also told TV Line, I hope there's a full moon this year. You never know who might come out. Megan Ori played Ruby, Little Red Riding Hood. In season 1, we learned that not only was she Little Red Riding Hood, but she was also a werewolf who maintained her human form by wearing a magical red cloak. And sometimes when she didn't have that magical red cloak, she would eat her boyfriend. Ruby in the early seasons was basically a plot device mostly used to sniff out missing individuals, but she also had 2 dedicated flashback episodes that showed us how she learned to control the powers she was initially taught to fear, and how she yearned for a sense of belonging and family. Although there was a planned romance between her and Dr. Frankenstein, this was ultimately scrapped when Megan and the Frankenstein actor left to lead other shows. Even though Ruby was, I think, an early fan favorite, she was also very much a side character, so to this point her disappearance hadn't been explained in the show. But Ruby and Mulan both coming back at the exact time the writers confirmed a new queer storyline to rival Prince Charming and Snow White, and specifically the writer said that someone's coming out, call up the CapCut girlies because we are about to be fed some content. But first, we gotta ask the question, Ruby girl, where the hell have you been, Loca? Turns out, Ruby went back to the Enchanted Forest to look for other werewolves, who in this story have now become a loose allegory for bisexuals. Actually, you know what? I think I made that up, but walk with me here. While there, she runs into Mulan, who has left the group of merry men, but is still not over her unrequited love for Aurora. Fans of Mulan's character will be thrilled to hear that actually she has just been sad this whole time. But the gay storyline is off to a strong start with this shot. Mulan and Aurora then go to Oz to find werewolves because unlike the Enchanted Forest filled with Disney characters, Oz is largely public domain and far less likely to implicate ABC with their homosexual proclivities. In this show, Ruby and Mulan are canonically friends of Dorothy. Dorothy had appeared on the show before in a Zelena flashback, but she was a child in that arc, and it was a very minor role. This time, she's an adult with a drastic personality change. She's cool, she's a fighter, she's super gay. Mulan goes off to do side quest activities while Dorothy and Ruby reluctantly trauma bond over their family abandonment. And you know that time Ruby ate her boyfriend, which kind of makes dating hard. But then Dorothy is kidnapped by Zelena and put under a sleeping curse. So Ruby tries to get Dorothy's Annie M to help find her, but unfortunately, Annie M gets turned into a mason jar of water before she can help. After Snow White encourages Ruby that she can save Dorothy all by herself with True Love's kiss, Ruby goes back to Oz and plants one right on Dorothy, and everyone claps, including a blissful Mulan, who without explanation is also standing there. It sounds absurd the way, listen, any Once Upon a Time episode does when condensed to a couple paragraphs. The showrunners said that True Love's kiss has been a staple of the show since the beginning. This past Sunday's episode was just another example of how in a fairy tale, as in life, love is love. I think this episode is sweet, and as the showrunners said, very much played on similar romance staples of the franchise. And again, although it seems small by today's standard, it was a landmark for the time on a popular, family-friendly ABC show. It feels like something that wouldn't happen on ABC these days, quite honestly. But it was also just this one episode. The writers compared this story to Snow and Charming, Hook and Emma, but those relationships were built up over not just multiple episodes, but multiple seasons. We even had 4 episodes dedicated to the Zelena-Hades romance, and no one cared about that. There is something a little shallow about this story, knowing that the Ruby actress was only signed as a guest star after disappearing for several seasons, and Dorothy was a character we basically didn't know until that episode, and would not see again. I can see why some fans and critics felt like this episode was a token, a way to temper fans upset about Mulan and Aurora without actually delivering what those people wanted. It's actually Mulan being there in this episode that really gives me the icky feeling. Mulan, the first canonically queer character, was cast aside. And then when she's brought back, you learn that not only is she still alone and sad, but she is just a prop for a different queer romance that will also only have 1 episode dedicated to it. The show could have given Mulan a happy ending by having her find love with Ruby, or having her find love with Elsa. They could have done anything. I don't think it's a coincidence that Mulan and Dorothy ostensibly are the same character, like they're stoic heroines who've had to find their way entirely on their own. But I, again, slightly tinfoil hat, but also I just genuinely believe this, speculate that Disney would not let their princesses have a more prominent queer storyline than the one they had already agreed to. Maybe it's just a coincidence that the first queer kiss on the show was between 2 non-Disney IPs, but who's to say? Of course, in the final season, the writers did introduce another queer relationship with Robin and Alice. And Alice is Alice in Wonderland. Although that version of Alice did not really resemble the Disney version to nearly the same degree that Mulan did, but still. And I actually do really like Robin and Alice's relationship. It's probably one of my favorites on the show, but it was on the last season, so its impact isn't going to be the same. This is the lengths that this show had to go to justify why Emma and Regina didn't even kiss one single time. The Charmings. I would say it's fairly uncontroversial among the Oat fandom that Snow White can be a little irritating. It's funny, remember when everyone on the internet was mad at Rachel Zegler because Disney gave her some lame talking points about how their version of Snow White wasn't going to be saved by the prince because it was modern and cool? Back then, a lot of people were like, why can't they write Snow White like she was on Once Upon a Time? Snow White on Once Upon a Time was a hero, a leader, she had a cool bow and arrow, but she's still in love with her prince. That's real feminism. Do y'all not remember the weekly forum discussions about how Snow was the worst part of the show? The retconning some people were willing to do just to dunk on my girl Rachel Zegler was crazy, and I would never participate in that. Snow White on Once Upon a Time does feel very much like she would have thrived working at BuzzFeed in the early 2010s, like that's the kind of feminism she comes from. Snow, when cast out by the evil queen, is on the run. She becomes a vigilante with her 7 dwarves. Well, technically 8, but Stealthy was tragically murdered while trying to escape King George, rest in peace. She struggles with the idea of being a leader before coming into her own. Where have I heard that before? Crazy. And for as many times as she is saved by Prince Charming, she saves him and their friends just as much. She's optimistic, believes that good always defeats evil. But she also has a very black and white view of morality that I personally find hard to stomach.
I just want to make sure the line is still there.
What line?
Between what Regina is willing to do and what you are.
I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get him home.
Now, in fairness, I think the groundwork was laid to explore Snow White as a flawed but ultimately good character, and had they done that successfully, I might have felt differently about her. But generally speaking, whenever there's a Prince Charming Snow flashback episode, I am instantly... Because the moral of every single one of those flashbacks is that true love conquers all, they're in love, they're soulmates, they're so good. Like, why are they running around this CGI maze right now? I'm sorry, you cannot make me care about this. This is also a criticism I have of the show as a whole, especially in the later seasons, the flashbacks got redundant real fast. I'm just saying, maybe we could have scrapped, let's say 5 of those flashback episodes reminding us that Snow and Charming are soulmates and swap them in for something that actually explored Snow's darker tendencies. And everyone would have clapped. I would have clapped. In season 1, Snow does not have her memories in Storybrooke. She is just a normal person, Mary Margaret, a school teacher. By the way, I love how even though she's Queen Snow White, even after everyone gets their cursed memories back, everyone still calls her Mary Margaret. Not just Mary, Mary Margaret, which is especially funny because she'll always be in some sort of moral peril. And it's like, why is everyone loudly exclaiming her full government name? Mary Margaret! She even goes by Lady Mary Margaret in front of people like Lancelot, who did not go to Storybrooke and only ever knew her as Snow White. Like, he doesn't know who Mary Margaret is. There is this random episode in season 6 where she decides that she's going to reclaim the name Snow White, but that felt more like the writers getting sick of everyone making fun of them on Twitter season after season, more than anything. In season 2, Snow not only has her memories, but she is now reunited with Emma, knowing that Emma is her child who, through tragedy, she didn't get to raise. Emma grew up an orphan who thought that she never had a family that wanted her, and Snow doesn't really know how to contend with the fact that Emma won't immediately accept her as a mother figure. At this point, we see a flashback episode where young Snow is just a little gremlin.
How dare you? Servants don't wear crowns.
Enough.
We are all the same. But I thought we were royals.
Bailey Madison, by the way, give her that Emmy. The way Bailey Madison completely mimicked Jennifer Goodwin.
You'd have a mother.
Mother. My mother.
The way she enunciates the word mother, that's mother. When Snow's mom, Ava, falls ill, Snow is given a magic candle, which can save her mom, but only if Snow sacrifices someone else's life. And Snow doesn't know this, but it's actually Cora that has poisoned Ava so that Regina can remarry Snow's father. And it is also Cora who has given her this candle, hoping that this will darken Snow's heart. But Snow chooses to be good, which becomes a defining characteristic for her. At the end of season 2, Cora is not only trying to harness all evil magic, she is also intent on killing every member of Snow's family and possibly everyone else in town, if she should succeed. Snow lies to Regina and tells her that if Regina wants her mother to love her and for Cora to be good, Regina needs to put Cora's heart back in Cora's body.
She can't love you, you know. She doesn't have her heart.
But what Regina doesn't know is that Snow will then be able to use that same candle she was offered as a child to kill Cora, which Snow ultimately does. This saved the life of Rumpelstiltskin, their entire family, which we've seen that family tree, that is basically the entire town, and ultimately ended Cora, who herself was a serial murderer intent on doing evil in perpetuity if Snow hadn't stepped in and stopped her at that moment. But guys, what if that was actually a bad thing? Because, you know, lying is wrong. The Oat writers will excuse racism, and yes, but they sure will, but they draw the line at harm reduction. Regina, in, an understandable fit of rage, pulls out Snow's heart and shows Snow that the murder of Cora has caused Snow's heart to turn black.
You darkened yourself.
No.
And once you blacken your heart, it only grows darker.
Oh no, Snow isn't a perfect human being. Burn her at the stake, I say. Cora is like mega evil. She was a murderous, abusive, dark-sided woman intent on killing dozens more. And this was the only way they could have reasonably stopped her. Killing that person is what made Snow's heart turn black? How about the countless guards Snow had killed over the years? You see that bow and arrow? Her confirmed just has to be in the double digits. Or how about when Snow slapped Geppetto, this little old man, because he chose to save his own son alongside Emma instead of Snow?
It had enough magic to transport to your daughter and my son, but I am so sorry.
Girl, he was already saving your daughter. I don't think he owed you anything. Prior to Cora's death, we learned that Cora was actually relentlessly bullied as a teenager by Snow's mother, Ava.
You stupid, foolish girl!
What happened here?
Oh, the peasant fell.
In fact, Ava essentially ruined Cora's life and her chance at a happy ending. When Emma learns this about her grandmother, she's confused. But we're taught that, hey, even heroes aren't heroes all the time. People make mistakes. Except when Regina pulls out Snow's heart, Regina tells Snow that this darkness can never be undone. Well, I guess ending someone's life is a little bit different than bullying, but still, this is a permanent stain on Snow's conscience that will forever taint her. Except the writers forget all about that because by the next season, Snow is able to walk through a door that only the pure of heart can pass through, which we know Snow is not. Maybe Snow took her heart to the dry cleaner or something, like she got a fresh start, but it's not even addressed in the show. We just forget all about that until like season 5. We learned that actually Snow's heart didn't turn black just because she killed Cora. That would be silly. It actually first turned black because one time when her and Charming were feeling a little wild, they, kidnapped, banished, and cursed a baby to be filled with darkness because there was a slight chance that their own child, Emma, would become bad. Charming and Snow are told this prophecy that their kid Emma can either grow up to be good or possibly grow up to not be good. Kind of like every person on the planet.
We are all born as blank slates with the potential for good and evil, and with the gift of free will.
There's nothing we can do to ensure our child's good.
But to the Charmings, this is unacceptable. They are unambiguously good and will not tolerate their future unborn child being anything less than perfect. And this is considered a good and normal motivation for them to have. So they are told that if they want, they can transfer all of the potential darkness from their own kid and condemn a different unborn child to a life of darkness. Eugenics, but make it fairy tale. Problem solved. So they steal Maleficent's dragon egg.
What kind of people are you? Threatening a child.
This isn't a child. This will become a monster just like you.
In fairness, they assume that this is not a human/dragon hybrid like Maleficent. They think this is just a dragon that they're cursing to a life of torture and evil, but it's still not great. And despite Maleficent begging them, they curse this innocent child to possibly save their own. They do feel bad about it because they accidentally, on top of cursing this unborn baby, also send it to another realm, separating Maleficent from her child for no reason.
So we didn't know that they were going to send that egg to another land.
They're immediately like, hey, the guy who told us that prophecy tricked us. We thought we were just giving this baby eternal damnation, not drop kicking it through space and time. And it's like, babe, I don't know if you have the moral high ground that you think you have right now. So now Emma has to contend with the fact that she's only the savior because her parents kidnapped another child.
I'm sorry, but if it were me, no matter what, I would not harm a defenseless person. And that right there, that goodness is exactly why we did what we did.
Like, she's gonna need something a little stronger than BetterHelp to get past that one. Because of course, this baby grows up in the real world as a person named Lily, who can also turn into a dragon because it's super cool. Understandably, Lily is a little upset that Snow White and Charming destroyed her life, robbed her of her potential for good, and separated her from her family and her realm for no goddamn reason. Lily is in her dragon form on a rampage, and Maleficent is like, hey, Snow and Charming, this is my daughter. I'm also a dragon. I'm gonna handle this situation, don't worry. But Snow says, you know what? No. I want to sprint unarmed at this dragon who justifiably hates me and make this situation 10 times more difficult for everyone around me. Like heroes do. Am I supposed to feel bad for Snow White? Because I don't. I actually don't. I have seen some fans suggest that because the author of the fairy tale was the one who pushed Snow and Charming to sacrifice the child, it wasn't actually Snow and Charming making that choice because the author is kind of like an omnipotent, all-controlling god, and that's why they acted wildly out of character. One, truly, what is the point of this Snow and Charming arc if they were just mindless pawns for the author with zero agency? That is just objectively bad writing. And two, it actually lines up a lot with their behavior in earlier seasons, like for example in season 4, where when Emma was struggling to control her magic, their automatic assumption was that Emma was a danger to themselves and to Emma's baby brother.
Okay.
Because also, as soon as they learned that Emma was their child, they had a second baby. Because they're like, oh, we didn't get to raise Emma as a baby. Let's make a new one and start over.
He sure has a lot of stuff. Well, I'm gonna have to give him everything.
It's twisted. They freak out at any perceived immorality from anyone around them. And I fully believe that they would curse a baby to maintain their own goodness. I just do. Knowing that Snow and Charming just casually kidnapped and tortured a child, when I hear Snow lecturing the others about hope and faith and being good for like the 40th time, I find it a little insincere. I at least wish that the show leaned into the absurdity of its own morality a little bit more, maybe played Snow White as a sort of Brie Vanderkamp kind of character, someone uppity and obnoxious at times. It's a bummer because I do think they had interesting ideas for Snow in season 2 and season 3, but they were put to the wayside because it was just easier to have Snow and Charming as the default stand-in for perfect love. Perfection is just not interesting to me, nor is it convincingly portrayed in Snow and Charming as characters. I also do think that for all the flack Snow White gets within the oat fandom, y'all let Prince Charming off way too easy. Let's start with that hair. This thinned out Lisa Rinna cut. They do later replace this wig with this Utah curl lace front, and I hate that this was actually one of the better wigs on the show. Prince Charming, of course, is not his government name. His name is David. He gets the name Charming because he's just so charming.
Aren't you a real Prince Charming?
I have a name, you know.
Don't care. Charming suits you. Cut me down, Charming.
By the way, not the only time we get a comically on-the-nose explanation of someone's last name in this show. When we first meet David, he is a poor farm boy, as shown by this wig, with an insidious baby bang. His mom is like, hey David, we're poor and about to starve and lose the farm. How about you marry someone so that we can have their dowry and afford to live?
As poor as we are, love is one thing I can afford.
Silly mother, why would I put food on your table when I could hold out for a bodacious babe with a big rack and a heart of gold? What David doesn't know is that when he was a baby, his mother sold his twin brother to One Direction. One Direction in this instance being King George. His twin brother lived as Prince James until he had a little oopsie. So King George offers for David to take over James's identity in exchange for saving the farm. And thus, Prince Charming is created. Like Snow, Charming is a good boy. He does good things. He saves people. He has no personality. But in Storybrooke, he has even less personality on account of him being in a coma. Of course, in season 1, neither Snow or David remember who they are or that they're in love. In fact, when David wakes up from a coma in Storybrooke, he doesn't even remember his own name. He initially attaches himself to Mary Margaret because Mary Margaret was the one who found him wandering around lost in the woods after he woke up. And of course, even though they don't remember, they were soulmates pre-curse, so they're naturally drawn to each other. That is until he suddenly remembers that he actually has a loving wife in Storybrooke named Catherine. And he tells Mary Margaret, sorry, I gotta try and make things work with my wife. Except David just starts an affair with Mary Margaret. Catherine, by the way, nothing but patient with him, asks if he wants to start a family, and he says yes. David accidentally gives Mary Margaret a Valentine's Day card that he meant to give to Catherine, and we're just supposed to be rooting for David and Mary Margaret because we as the audience know that they're Snow and Prince Charming. But setting aside these extreme extenuating circumstances, David is just objectively being an asshole, no? There's even this one episode where the town finds out about the affair, and Mary Margaret is briefly declared the town harlot.
Town harlot? The only person in this town that people like less than me is you.
And he doesn't do jack shit about that. Mary Margaret also gets pissed at David because there's another episode where Catherine goes missing, presumed dead, and Snow's fingerprints are found on what looks like a murder weapon. Mary is like, David, you may have only known me for 2 weeks, but surely you know that I would never murder someone because I am good. That's my personality trait. And it's like, honestly, Mary, I think he might have a reason to question some things. Mary Margaret, of course, did not murder anyone. Catherine was just, She was just hanging out in the woods or something. I honestly forget. Anyways, they have this scene where Catherine forgives David for treating her like garbage and gives permission for him to go be with Mary Margaret. And that is truly the only justification we get for celebrating all of this nonsense. There also really is something to be said about how Charming can be flawed, poorly developed as a character, and annoying as hell in a way that Snow White simply cannot. Snow and Charming are a unit. Charming was also very much willing to kidnap and curse a child. He also is often judgmental and a moral grandstander, actually even more than Snow is. But no one really cares about that because, he's just a handsome, milquetoast white guy. I give the Oat writers kudos that they did attempt to create a complex character with Snow White, even if it wasn't as successful as other characters like Regina or Emma. I just know that Mary Margaret would blast canceled by Taylor Swift. I also wanted to take this time to point out some things I do love about this show that didn't fit in with everything else I talked about. First of all, the green screen. We all know that the green screen in the pilot is the best.
Sorry I'm late.
But that is far from the only time that CGI gets to shine. I'm sure you can tell from the footage, but this show, like many others, was mostly filmed on location in Vancouver, Canada. In season 3, they go to Neverland, and they built this classic tropical jungle set, which, don't get me wrong, has its charm. I also love that they styled Rumpelstiltskin with this golden bronze makeup look to match the environment. But when they weren't using that set, they would just cut to the group clearly running through a cold evergreen forest, which we as the audience are meant to see as the same tropical island. When they returned to Neverland in later seasons, they didn't even bother trying to pretend that it's tropical. They just put them straight on a rocky lakeside and demand the audience use their imagination. For the most part, if they're not filming in the woods or the 4 physical sets they reuse throughout the show, this show is almost entirely shot on a green screened CGI soundstage. Even places where they probably could have just cheaply rented an outdoor space like a fire escape, a rooftop, or just a normal hill, are instead gloriously recreated in PS1 graphics. There's also, of course, magic, dragons, mythical creatures. So an insane amount of CGI is required basically every episode. Listen, there is a reason that shows like Game of Thrones need over a year to shoot only 10 episodes. It is expensive as hell to make CGI mythical creatures look good. Once Upon a Time had to not only render almost every background, but they also had to constantly make new magical assets on top of everything else that they had to spend on the show. And there were 22 episodes every season. If the CGI was at the level of Game of Thrones, this would be the most expensive show ever made. I fully understand why the CGI looks the way that it does, but this is, remember, not a complaint. It is a delight. And I just wanted to include some of my favorite atrocious CGI and green screen moments for you all, because they do make me laugh. Second, this is a show with an objectively silly premise. Again, Captain Hook has a Glock. The Wicked Witch of the West hits the Black Fairy with her car.
Miss me.
This scene happens in season 1. And I don't care to explain the context of it. But this show never takes itself too seriously. It is camp in its purest form.
That is someone you don't want to mess with. I call her Bo Peep.
You can genuinely tell that the writers were having a ball writing some of this dialogue.
You're gonna have to wait a long time and watch me carry it around, hauling it to strange and mysterious places.
One of my favorite running bits on the show is the fairy tale characters, despite many of them having lived in Maine for many years, never understand modern technology.
It's a picture from up inside Zelina.
Whoa, mate.
No, it's of the baby. They call it a sonogram.
I left my talking phone in the back of your truck. It's just called a phone.
Who knows what that wicked woman would do?
I don't like what that enchanted box was saying.
I've been in my fair share of Briggs, but none as barbaric as that. They force-fed me something called baloney.
What can I say? It tickles me. There's also a musical episode of Once Upon a Time.
Now I'm singing out, and my do I sound good.
which if you know anything about me, you know that's right up my alley. I do see a lot of people complaining about this episode because this episode is also where Hook and Emma got married. And shippers wanted some serious romantic scenes for their CapCut edits, not these goofy songs.
This feeling, the pain I knew when Rumpel turned his back on my heart.
But as someone who couldn't care less about Hook and Emma, I was thrilled. It's actually pretty weak as far as musical episodes of shows go. There are definitely better iterations in other series, but I, for one, will never complain about a canon-breaking musical episode. I think every show needs one, okay? We used to be a society, and the people who don't like it, you're no fun. Watch Captain Hook sing and dance.
Silver, gold, jewels. My dear prince and princess, your offer is meaningless.
And third, on a slightly more serious note, I genuinely do love that the show is so largely focused on deeply flawed, complicated women. We don't just see their romantic relationships evolve, but also their friendships and their very traumatic familial relationships, which even in a high fantasy show, do feel grounded in the realities of generational trauma, misogyny, and self-discovery. The non-girlies can and should enjoy this show, but for the girlies especially, it is just a comfort watch. I've seen a lot of people talk about the possibility of a Once Upon a Time reboot, and to be honest, I get why people suspect one. Multiple cast members, including Ginnifer Goodwin and Colin O'Donoghue, have said that they would love to come back for a revival. Lana Parrilla especially, my beloved, has expressed interest multiple times and still makes regular appearances at fan conventions celebrating the show. The Once Upon a Time Twitter account that was dormant for many years after the show just began posting again a few months ago. And considering Disney does not have much interest in creating original work these days, that sort of move does feel perfectly designed to pathetically beg everyone to rejoin their Disney Plus account, which, no thank you. To be honest, I've always felt that in any fan space, when it comes to TV series or movies, the idea of a reboot is almost always more enticing than the actual end product. I feel like Dexter is the only reboot I've heard good things about. Do I actually want the characters I watched 10 years ago to talk about how, wow, they certainly are older now and what's with all these 6-7 jokes? Because that is truly what every reboot feels like to me. To be honest, I feel like Once Upon a Time already got a reboot. They just didn't call it one. They called it Season 7. Understandably, after 6 lengthy seasons, many of the Oat actors were ready to move on from the franchise and pursue other interests. Jared Gilmore, who was 10 when he first started playing Henry, was now almost an adult. Even Ginnifer Goodwin and Josh Dallas, Snow and Charming, felt like they were just biding their time. In season 6, they introduced this plotline where Snow and Charming have this sleeping curse where only one of them can be awake at a time. This was done by the evil queen because Regina separated the evil part of herself into a separate sentient being. And when, of course, the evil queen also gets redeemed, everyone's like, wait, shouldn't we have the evil queen reverse that sleeping curse so that Snow and Charming can be involved in the plot again? And they legit just go, nah, Regina can handle that later. Jennifer Morrison, the lead of the show, like many of her fellow cast members, chose not to renew her contract after the original contract for a 6-season commitment expired. But how do you have Once Upon a Time without your protagonist? Or, hey, 90% of your main cast? You get a new one, new protagonist, new setting. That way, all of the characters you know and love can peacefully exist just off screen. In season 7, Henry explains, hey, did you know that there are actually thousands of different versions of fairy tale characters and universes? I'm going to take a gap year exploring one of the AU fairy tale lands, and I also have a motorcycle now. That's something I'm very into, is having a motorcycle. I actually think this AU version of fairy tale characters was a genius idea on the writer's part. Not only do different countries and cultures have slight variations of fairy tales in real life, but it also means that they can reuse characters, but with a totally different actor, origin story, without breaking the original canon. She is literally not your Cinderella. Not only does this present way more story possibilities, it's also a chance to make the ensemble cast more diverse, which was something they desperately needed in those first 6 seasons. In season 7, they took that opportunity. Season 7 featured the most diverse cast to date, and they weren't just underdeveloped and forgotten side characters like Rapunzel, Aladdin, Lancelot. They were core characters with dedicated overarching episodes and plot lines. It is shocking that it took over 140 episodes or something for the show to really get that right, but I can appreciate the attempt. We then flash forward and Henry is now an adult, played by, of course, a different actor. and he becomes the new protagonist of the franchise. Just like his mom Emma, Henry is cursed and sent to Seattle, Washington with no memories of his fairy tale family until his own 10-year-old daughter arrives at his doorstep. It really is a return to form for the series, to the letter. Now, I'm not going to pretend that season 7 was as good as, say, seasons 1 through 3, but it is just about on par with season 4 and leagues above seasons 5 and 6. As long as you accept it as basically a reboot, accept that Emma isn't the lead anymore, it has all of the makings of a good Once Upon a Time season. This season has Adelaide Kane, which if you were raised on the loosely historical fashion of Reign like I was, very iconic. Regina's cursed persona in Seattle is Ronnie, a deeply lesbian-coded bar owner, and you can tell Lana Parrilla is having fun with this new take on her character. Alice and Robin have a very sweet romance arc that also touches on anxiety and mental health in a way that the show really hadn't before. My favorite detail is that Henry starts a podcast called H-Town. You know, like the deeply serious investigative journalism podcast S-Town about mental health and crime in small towns. Except this is just about this random white guy's adventures in a gentrified Seattle. People love H-Town. They love H-Town so much.
Wait, you're Henry Mills? I listen to your podcast. It's actually kind of great. Everyone in here talks about it.
They yearn for the White Guy podcast so much that a major podcast studio offers him a job. But if he took the job, he'd have to give up H-Town.
So they pay you to keep making H-Town?
Well, no, not exactly. They are going to pay me to produce other people's podcasts.
But you can still make H-Town, right?
Please, anything but that, Henry. I just have a hard time imagining a new reboot beating the epic highs and lows of H-Town. But you know, perhaps one day I'll be proven wrong. It's me on a different day. The clouds were moving so fast when I was filming, so I'm sure you can see the lighting was going from crazy dark to crazy overexposed constantly, so I decided to film the outro on a different day. Rewatching and finally finishing Once Upon a Time was a beautiful, insane, arduous journey where, you know, I learned a lot about life and compulsive heterosexuality. Truly, I could have kept talking about this show because there is so much insanity. I tried to keep it to the highlights, as it were. Also wanted to just say thank you again to today's sponsor, Delete Me. Be sure to check them out with either the link in my description or the QR code. And as usual, if you want to see more from me, I stream on Twitch a few times a week, upload the VODs of that to my second channel. I also upload monthly bonus videos over on Patreon for people who want to support me over there. This month, we are talking about The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives Season 3. Marciana was not worth all that drama. I'll say that much here. But if you're not interested in watching any of that, totally cool. I get it. But if you liked this video, you could feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.